You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast brought to you by 90 Min for this Bank Holiday Monday special. Hope you've all had a great weekend. Hope you're enjoying the extra day off. Hope you're making the most of it. Although if you are based here in London, the weather is a bit gloomy, a little bit cloudy. It's not too cold, so you can get away with outdoor activities, but it's not ideal, as I say. A little bit cloudy, a little bit gloomy, a bit like the mood around Arsenal at the moment. On this edition of the show, we're going to be discussing KSE's stance around Mikel Arteta. We're going to be talking about Alexandre Lacazette's future as well as Willian'S. And we'll also be bringing you up to date with a couple of transfer reports that have dropped this morning. Now, remember, tomorrow is transfer deadline day, and we're going to be bringing you lots of coverage around that. We're going to be bringing you a couple of bits and pieces in terms of live streams throughout the course of the day. So looking forward to that. So I'm not going to focus predominantly on transfer stuff today, although we are going to touch on it just to bring you guys up to date in case at the time of listening you haven't had the updates or you haven't read the updates. But as I say, we're going to be focusing mainly on KSE's stance around Mikel Arteta, the future of Alexandre Lacazette, Willian, and plenty more. Let's say some hellos to those of you in the chat because we've been live for a minute and we've already got 100 of you watching, which is incredible. Big hello to Bargav, to Junior Gunner, to Alex McCarthy, to Ahmad, to Syed, to Kabir, to Josh, to Julian, to Matt, to Wesbird, and Mr. Wesbird, of course, and all the rest of you in the chat box as well. Hope you're all doing well. So where are we at with Mikel Arteta? Now, I talked yesterday at length on the podcast about how for me now it's kind of time to probably move on. It's time to change direction because I'm no longer convinced that he is the right man. You know, I've had my reservations for a while. They really kicked in, I would say, when we lost to Villarreal in last season's UEFA Europa League. And I wanted to stay measured and I wanted to be fair and I wanted to kind of look at it and say it was his first full season in charge. There were ups and downs. There were difficulties that were outside of his control. And therefore, I would, I said it at the time when we lost to Villarreal. I said, if he got sacked now, you could have no complaints. But having it made clear to us that Mikel Arteta was going to be in charge this season, that he was going to be given the summer, and that he was going to be given transfer funds to strengthen the side. I think a lot of us were kind of the opinion, well, the season kicks off and the pressure is already there, and therefore there is very little margin for error for Mikel Arteta. And unfortunately, the season has started in a hopeless fashion. Am I heartbroken that we got beaten by Manchester City? Am I shocked that we lost to Chelsea? Absolutely not. They're two sides that I've said repeatedly are on a different league to us, on a different planet, on a completely different level. But it's the manner of those defeats. It's the whole picture. It's the uncertainty around which direction in which we're traveling, how the manager's looking to move us forward. And it just feels to me like the chances of Mikel Arteta turning this round are very slim. And therefore, with the interest of the club at heart, with the interest of the football team at the forefront of our opinions as fans and feelings as fans, you have to say that moving him on is probably the right thing to do now. But that's not going to be the case. Arsenal are not planning to move Mikel Arteta on. Not now, anyway. That's according to a report from Goal. Charles Watts penned it. And Charles Watts says that Arsenal, and I quote, do not want a change of personnel in the managerial position. So Arsenal are not looking, as it stands today, 30th of August, Bank Holiday Monday, they are not looking to move Mikel Arteta on. He will still be the manager of the club when we take to the field to play Norwich not next weekend, the weekend after. But he's on borrowed time. there's been a lot of reports over the last few weeks, which, suggested that he was going to be given until the next international break. So not this one that we're currently in, but the one that comes up in October to prove himself, to show that there'd been some progress and to essentially save his job. However, I said at the time that I felt that report was a little bit of a guess, and I still stand by that. I still think it was. I think that as journalists, a lot of the time you have great information and you use that information to to base your stories around, to base your articles around, and to then go out there with credible information. But a lot of the time, journalists will kind of I'm not going to say make things up, because it's the wrong thing, but they will take a load of evidence, take a load of reports, a load of snippets, a load of this and that, and sometimes go out on a limb and almost predict something that could happen. If it goes wrong, you could say it was bad information, but if it goes right, you look like an absolute genius and you've predicted it or come out with it before anybody else has. And a lot of the time in this industry, that goes on. So I do feel like that Telegraph report about Mikel Arteta being sacked by the next international break if things don't dramatically improve is a bit of a guess. It is a bit of a stab in the dark, but it's one that could realistically come true. If Arsenal do not turn results around, if Arsenal do not show clear progress in the coming weeks, then you wouldn't be surprised, would you, if KSE decided it was time to pull the plug. But as I say, according to Charles Watts of Goal, they are not currently looking to replace Mikel Arteta. They want the stability. They want to keep hold of him. They believe that this is a long-term project. It's why they hired him over more experienced candidates in the first place. And having backed him the way they have in the transfer market, as I've said on multiple occasions, I cannot see them cutting him loose at this point in the season. I don't really know how much worse, though, it's got to get. We're bottom of the table with 0 points, 0 goals scored, 7 shots on target all season, and Tottenham Hotspur are sitting pretty at the top of the Premier League. I mean, as an Arsenal fan, I don't know how much worse it can get. But I also have to be sensible and have to be measured and have to remember that we've played Chelsea and City. And if you're in the same position 5-6 games into the season, when you've had a more balanced group of fixtures in terms of the difficulty, then I think that's the time to pull the trigger or to really start making the noise. For me, I don't see us moving forward with Mikel Arteta anymore, and therefore I'd do it now. But I think if it is based purely on results, then you can't base it on what we saw against City and Chelsea. For me, it's bigger than that. And that's the point I'm trying to make. It's not just about Arsenal losing those 2 games. It's not just about Arsenal losing to Brentford. It's not just about the first 3 performances of this season. It is about the wider picture and about Mikel Arteta's tenure as a whole so far simply not being good enough, not being up to scratch, not showing us enough in terms of the progress that we all desperately want to see. So yeah, KSE keeping hold of him for now anyway. Another story I just wanted to touch on is with regards to Alexandre Lacazette. It's been widely reported that Alexandre Lacazette will not depart Arsenal Football Club between now and the closure of this transfer window. But equally, he will not be offered a new contract. He will not sign a new contract, and that he will look for a new challenge when his contract comes to an end. So again, Arsenal going to allow a player to run down his contract. Poor business once again from this football club. I've got a little bit of sympathy with the Lacazette situation in that he isn't someone who throughout his Arsenal career, in my opinion, has shown himself to be good enough to lead our line. And so the reservations about him maybe two seasons ago would have stopped Arsenal offering him a new contract earlier. And now we're in a place where if we lose him, we lose him. I don't think anybody will lose much sleep at night if we lost Alexandre Lacazette, if it meant we could go out and look for another striker. But again, to allow a player to walk away from the club, which he's seemingly going to do on a free transfer, is shocking business. And it's another prime example of the mismanagement of this football club. A player that we signed a few years ago for close to £50 million is going to walk away, having not had a great impact, I would say, on a free transfer. And that's That's the kind of business that we're still suffering from. That's the kind of thing that is a hangover from the previous regime. And so I'm not defending Arteta here. You know, I said it yesterday. I think it's time for him to go. I don't think that he takes us forward. I don't think that he recovers from this. I think a more experienced coach maybe finds his way to navigate through these difficult waters. But Mikel Arteta is out of his depth. It's clear to see. And I think that what you've got now is you've got a situation where part of it is on Mikel Arteta. A lot of it is on Mikel Arteta. But this Lacazette story and this Lacazette whole debacle is another example of something that is a hangover from previous and something that Mikel Arteta has had to kind of contend with during his managerial tenure. So that's why I've tried to be so balanced and so measured about it all, because I think a lot of people realize it as well, you know, that there are other issues at play here. There are other problems and other kind of forces at play here. And mistakes that have happened in the past continue to haunt us. And therefore, you can pinpoint a lot of the stuff that's going wrong on the pitch at Mikel Arteta. But when you look at the stuff behind the scenes, you look at the stuff off the field, a lot of that is obviously, you know, a consequence of poor management in years gone by. The other bit of news wanted to just touch on was with regards to Willian. Now, we heard over the weekend that Willian was willing, and I quote, to rip up his Arsenal contract, say goodbye to the club and return to Brazil with Corinthians. We were also told over the weekend that that deal would be announced at the start of this week. Still no announcement as of yet, but from what we understand, that is edging closer. So Willian is going to be departing Arsenal Football Club between now and the closure of the transfer window. And look, you've got to say, a lot of Arsenal fans, you know, have made Willian public enemy number one over the last 12 months or so. Has he been good enough? Has he been the Willian that was at Chelsea? No, he hasn't. He hasn't lived up to the bill. He struggled for form. He started the season really well, went through a dip, and Mikel probably persisted with him for a bit longer than he should have. That led to fan criticism. That led to people almost pointing at him as the root cause of all of our issues because of the fact that he was in the team and not necessarily playing very well. But you've got to say fair play to Willian if this is indeed true, that he is going to rip up that contract, walk away from it, terminate it, and go and join Corinthians, because he doesn't have to do that. You know, the club made a massive error in giving him that sort of money. You know, you take gambles in football. That was a gamble that hasn't paid off. And Arsenal could quite easily be paying for that for a number of years to come. But with Willian seemingly deciding to take this stance, it saves Arsenal a lot of money. And it shows... There we go. I just think the audio just cut there. Apologies for that. But yeah, it just shows a lot, doesn't it, about the integrity of the man and what Willian is all about. And a lot of people have, as I say, pointed fingers at him, criticised him quite heavily during his time at Arsenal. But I think this is a nice gesture, and it's great to see that there are still footballers in the world that have that, you know, that have that kind of humility, a kind of respect, is that the right word, or have that kind of presence of mind to understand that it's not worked out here. Football's a short career. I want to make the most of it. I want to go and play somewhere where I'm going to be a regular fixture. Returning to Brazil is probably something that Willian probably sees as his end game as well, and that opportunity has come along, and it's just a deal that seems to suit everybody. So fair play to Willian for that, if that is indeed true, and that Arsenal are going to almost escape all responsibility of living up to that huge contract that they gave him when he signed for the club last summer. Just in terms of brief transfer news, just a couple of updates. According to reports, Crystal Palace are still keen on signing Eddie Nketiah. There's still quite a bit of a gap between what they are willing to pay and Arsenal's £20 million valuation, but there is a willingness on all sides to get that deal moving between now and the closure of the window. So we could well see Eddie Nketiah make the swap from North London to South and join up with our old hero, Patrick Vieira, down at Selhurst Park. We've also heard that Everton are in talks with Arsenal over Ainsley Maitland-Niles. That's according to The Athletic. Apparently the Toffees have made an offer to take the player on loan. I don't know any more details on that. I don't know any more information on that. I don't know if that means that there'll be an obligation or an option to buy at the end of it, I'm not really sure what the drill is. But what I would say is, if we're not going to get any money for Ainsley Maitland-Niles, why the hell are we weakening our side by sending him on loan to Everton? It just, to me, it would make no sense. So I hope that doesn't happen, and I'm just bringing up the article now. Here it is. Everton are in talks with Arsenal over signing Ainsley Maitland-Niles on a season-long loan with an option to buy. Maitland-Niles has made 24 appearances. Maitland-Niles, who's 24, he hasn't made 24 appearances, has made 2 appearances for Arsenal this season, but has been unable to win a regular spot in the 11. So Ainsley Maitland-Niles could be on his way. The option to buy is there, but you got to force it into being an obligation, Arsenal. I mean, come on. You're essentially weakening our squad, giving him to Everton for a season, and saying, well, if you want him, you can buy him, but if you don't, then you can send him back, and then we've got to deal with that situation all over again. Do I think he breaks into the side? Do I think he's a starter at Arsenal? No, I don't. If I name my best Arsenal 11, Ainsley Maitland-Niles is not in it. But equally, he is a squad player that is useful. He can play at right back, he can play at left back, he can play in the centre of midfield, he can play on either of the flanks if you really need him to. And for me, loaning him out makes no bloody sense unless there is an obligation to buy. And we've seen a lot of those deals being done in Europe at the moment. We know that a lot of clubs have been impacted by the COVID pandemic. We know that a lot of clubs are, wanting to do business, but realizing and understanding that financially they're not quite in that position to do so. Clubs are almost anticipating the revenue that they're planning to make over the course of this next season and already allocating that to transfer business ahead of time. And that's what you've seen in Italy. You've seen plenty of that. You're going to see it all around Europe. But to do a deal like that with an option to buy it drives me absolutely crazy, because basically what you're doing, as I said, is you are weakening our squad by giving Ainsley Maitland-Niles to Everton and giving them the upper hand where they can say, no, we don't want him, and send him straight back. In which case, we've been weaker for an entire season because our squad has lost some depth in a very good utility player. And then Everton just decide, no, actually served this purpose. Now see you later. No, doesn't work for me. Hardick says, Harry, there is something on your hair. Check it out. No, there isn't. There's a bit of Joe on my hair, but that's about it. There isn't anything on there, I promise you. I'd feel it, I'm sure. A couple of people talking in the chat about Emerson Royale, a player that we've been linked with throughout this window, joining Tottenham. I don't know anything about that at this moment in time. We are live, so I can't necessarily check that. Didn't read anything about that prior to going live, but that might change, of course. And yeah, so those are the updates on the transfer front. The other bit was the Mirror, just reporting that Mikel Arteta wants to bring in a right back between now and the end of the window. So we'll see if anything gets over the line in that short period of time. No real credible links at the moment, which is worrying when you think that we've got a day left. It's worrying to think that Arsenal's, unless something is advanced or is down the line or is going to be done very, very quickly. We don't know of any concrete interest in anyone at this moment in time, and we don't know of any deal that is imminent. So it's going to be a race against the clock on that one. What else have we got? There's another story doing the rounds that Arsenal are interested in signing Asensio from Real Madrid. We talked about that earlier in the summer. Can't see it somehow. I've got to be honest. So I wouldn't pay a great deal of attention to that one at this stage, but obviously things can change. So yeah, that's our kind of roundup on what is going on. Just to recap before we take your questions in the chat box, KSE currently do not plan to change the manager. That might change, but according to Charles Watts at Goal, that is their current stance. Alexandre Lacazette will run down his Arsenal contract and leave us on a free next summer, unless, of course, the club decide to offer him a new deal. I can't say I expect that to happen though. Willian is expected to rip up his his Arsenal contract and join Corinthians. Nketiah is still wanted by Crystal Palace. Everton have made a loan approach over Ainsley Maitland-Niles, and Mikel Arteta apparently still wants to sign a right back. So that is where we are at. Start getting your questions in the live chat box. We'll take a few of those before we wrap up on this live edition of the Chronicles of a Gooner. As I say, plenty of content coming up between now and the end of the transfer window, so make sure you stay tuned. But just want to quickly remind you that this show is brought to you by manscaped.com. So for all your male grooming needs, please head over to the website, check out their fantastic products. The Lawnmower 4.0 comes highly recommended, and become one of more than 2 million men in the world who currently manscape. I promise your partners will thank you. Enter our discount code, which is 90min20, and you stand to receive 20% off of your order, as well as free worldwide shipping. Right. Also, if you want to become a member of the channel and support me to bring you more content, you can do so by clicking on the link in the description. Make sure you hit the like button if you haven't done so already. There's over 350 of you watching on YouTube alone right now, but where are we in terms of likes? That is the big question. Let me just check in on that. We have got 66 likes on the board. Come on, guys. We can do better than that. There's over 350 of you, as I say, watching on YouTube. Let's try and get that up to 150 at the bare minimum. Also, subscribe to the channel if you are new, because we are fast approaching 16k here on YouTube. If you're listening via the audio platforms, then please do leave us a review. It really helps. Right, let's get some of your questions in from the live chat. Let's see what we've got. Julian Tuffery says, do we really sack Arteta after 3 games? Should we not give him a chance with a full squad? 10 games, otherwise we should have flicked him at the end of last season. So when I said that I would give him up till Christmas, which when you think about it, if we had 2 games in August, you know, say 3-4 games in September, and then October, that leads you into December. When I said that a few weeks ago, or a few days ago even, it might have been, that I expected the club to give him that amount of time, I was harshly criticized on here. I had people DMing me, people tweeting me saying, you said give him to Christmas. I said that I think the club will give him to Christmas. That was my view. And my view on that hasn't really changed. My view on whether he should go now, though, is kind of different. And my view is that we're watching a beaten Arsenal every single week. We're watching an Arsenal with no fight, with no passion, with no desire. If we were getting beat, but it looked like the team were motivated, that the team were well organized, well set out, then I wouldn't be calling for his head. I honestly mean that. It's not the defeats, it's the nature of the defeats for me that are a real problem. I understand there are players missing, but I think one of the basic fundamentals as a manager is you've got to be able to motivate people. And Mikel Arteta is failing in that department. I think that, combined with what we saw over the course of last season, plus, you know, the fact that we look at some of our transfer business and we still feel that while some of it was decent, that we haven't done enough, means that, you know, it's very difficult to envisage him turning this around. And in which case, why do you want to give him another 7 games to potentially leave us further off the pace and essentially write off our season before it's even begun? So that's where I'm at. Now, I think the club will take more of a kind of softer stance on that. I think they will look at it in the way that I thought they would look at it, which is probably give him 10 or so games and then review it there. But I just think, in my personal opinion, that, you know, yes, if we weren't sure, then we probably should have sacked him in the summer. And we should have maybe done it after Villarreal and then given someone else the funds, given someone else the time on the training ground over the summer to embed new ideas and get us going again. But equally, I don't think you can just delay it because we didn't do it in the summer, and that you should allow us to slip further down. Not that you can go further down than rock bottom of the Premier League, but you know what I'm saying? Allow the rot to continue just because we did give him the start of the season. I think you can make a mistake in the past, and it's important that you rectify that mistake as quickly as possible. I just don't see him turning it around at the moment. I really don't. And as I've said repeatedly, it's not because we lost to Chelsea. It's not because we lost to Manchester City. It's because of the nature of the defeats. It's because there's a lack of motivation within the group. You can see it. There's a lack of cohesion. There's a lack of a plan in terms of how we're playing. And as I've said before, I don't think our transfer strategy necessarily has married up to what Mikel Arteta wants to do on the pitch. And that really worries me, because it feels like him and Edu have got too much control, so much control that they're almost spreading themselves thin across multiple areas and not doing a good enough job at what it is they're supposed to be doing as a result of that. Might not be their fault. It might be KSE's fault. It probably is largely to do with the fact that the structure around the whole club is not right. But I just don't see how we turn this around. I think we beat Norwich. I think we might even go and beat Burnley. But is that actually turning it around? That's kind of painting a false picture, in my opinion. Arsenal need to be challenging for the top 6 at the very minimum this season. And looking at what we've seen so far, I don't look at a team that can do that. I don't, And I was having a conversation yesterday, just before we move on. I was having a conversation with my brothers in the car. We were on a long drive and we were talking about the whole situation at Arsenal, the current state of the club. And we were talking about sort of some of the players that we maybe could have gone and got this summer that wouldn't have cost us an arm and a leg, but would have immediately impacted and improved the squad. And we actually were looking it up while we were driving. We were looking at some stats. Transfermarkt website is great for that. And we were looking at Smith Rowe and Saka and a couple of others. And this is not to dig them out. People are going to take this in the wrong way. But the fact that we've gone into a season relying on players like Emile Smith Rowe and Bukayo Saka to essentially propel us to the level at which we want to be, when actually their numbers in terms of goals and assists are actually quite modest, is a big concern in itself. Now, that's not to slag those players off. In my opinion, we should never be in a place as Arsenal Football Club where they are the focal point of our team. They should be players who are surrounded by top quality, who are able to learn their trade, get the game time that they need to develop, and should be at the club with a view to going on and becoming what we need them to be. But the reliance on 2 players who are great in terms of the talent and in terms of what their future holds, but actually in terms of actual outputs right now are not great, it is a big concern. And people will take that the wrong way. People say I'm slagging them off. I'm not. I'm just saying that we've gone from relying on Alexis Sanchez, who will contribute X amount of goals, Mesut Ozil, who will contribute X amount of assists, Robin van Persie, even Theo Walcott used to contribute good numbers. We've gone from that to relying on a group of youngsters who might do it, but they're not yet there yet. And that tells you all you need to know about why Arsenal are where they are. And actually, when you analyze the squad in that way and you look at it a little bit more statistically, and maybe we'll do a separate show on this, actually, it's not a surprise that Arsenal are struggling the way they are. Let's take a few more questions. T says, Harry, do you prefer Dashin, Bigla, or just lemon in your souvlaga? Just lemon for me. Matt G says, Harry, how come the Glazers are so much better at PR than the Chronicles? Man U fans are unhappy, so they bring back Ronaldo to shut them up for a couple of years. Yeah, I mean, Man United fans are always complaining about the Glazers, aren't they? Constantly. And from the outside looking in, it's really hard to understand why, isn't it? Because they do spend money. They do spend big. They've backed their managers over recent years. And it's really difficult to understand where they're coming from. But I guess I'm just cautious of kind of saying that the fans are wrong here, because I don't really follow United close enough or understand the ins and outs of the club to know why it is they're unhappy. But you're right. On the surface of things, they seem to do a lot to appease the fans, or a lot more than ours do anyway. Let's see what else we've got here. I just want to say a big welcome to one of our new members, Gooner SG. Welcome to the channel. Thank you for signing up, my friend. Really, really appreciate it. Make sure you click on the community tab and join the Discord server. The link is there. It's only visible to members. So thank you for that. And make sure you get over there. Sooty FM says, we sack Arteta, then who do we bring in? Who will take on the challenge at Arsenal? It's a great question, because you're looking out in the landscape right now and you're trying to identify who it is that Arsenal should be going for. Everyone says Antonio Conte. Everybody talks about it. I would love Antonio Conte to come in and take over Arsenal Football Club. But is that realistic? it isn't. You know, you got to be honest. You know, we're talking about Antonio Conte, who walked away from the Serie A champions because they didn't match his ambition, because they told him he was going to have to sell one of his key players. To think he would come here, take on this project, put up with all the bullshit that comes from above, and operate in this kind of structure where there is no structure, or this non-existent structure, just feels mad. Like, I don't see him taking the job. I don't think finance would be an issue in terms of what he would earn. I think Arsenal could afford that, but I just don't think he takes this project on. I think managers at the elite level are in a privileged position whereby they can pick and choose what jobs they want. Everybody wants them. They will pick and choose the challenge that suits them best. Somebody with his experience would obviously be better in Mikel Arteta's role, where he is having to do a little bit more. And with your experience, you probably manage the workload a little bit better. But, you know, I don't know. And again, you know, when the time comes, when Mikel Arteta is sacked, we will put together some episodes where we are looking at potential managerial candidates. But at the moment, I haven't really thought that far down the line. For me, it's about dealing with the issue at hand. And the big, I guess the big issue here, and I've said this time and time again, is, do I trust KSE that if they do pull the trigger on Mikel Arteta, they bring the right man in? I don't. I really don't. Let's continue down the chat. Jid says that, Harry, the performances haven't been great, but don't you think that if we start winning against Norwich, things will click and we will turn a corner? Well, it would be a massive confidence boost, and it would be the kickoff of our season. You know, I said to you guys on the show yesterday, if you told me at the beginning of the season that our season was going to start against Norwich on the 4th game, I wouldn't have been happy with that, but I wouldn't have been surprised with it equally, which tells you a lot about our expectations going into the campaign. But yeah, you know, it could kick us into a better run of form, and we desperately need that. And listen, nobody would be happier than me if Mikel Arteta, if he does stay on, if he turned this around and got us back to where we want to be. But I'm just, with each passing week, I'm struggling to see how he turns this around. It's almost like a gap, a window that is just closing and closing and closing and closing, and you can't see how Mikel Arteta, who's sprinting towards it, is going to be able to dive through this window and save the team before it slams shut on him. Shit analogy, I know, but there you go. Yeah, so I'm just really struggling, man. I gotta say, really struggling at the moment. Big shout out to Gooner, who says, love your show, bro. Thank you, man, and thank you again for signing up. We've got a couple, we've got a super chat in there from Said Abdullah. Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate your kind donation. He says, when you have in your squad the wrong experienced players and young players who will make mistakes and need time to develop, it becomes difficult to implement your ideas. But still, Arteta has to find a way to adapt, and he's not. Yeah, you know, you've summed that up brilliantly, mate. And thank you again for the kind donation. Really appreciate it. Alex McCarthy says, Arteta was not a club legend. What did KSE see that we are not right now? We owe Mikel nothing, and Emery was sacked for far less. Absolutely, Emery was sacked for far less. And I think, you know, a lot of people gave me stick during Unai Emery's tenure. And apologies for looking down, because I am looking through the chat. But yeah, you know, a lot of people gave me stick about my stance on Unai Emery. I picked him out as someone I didn't think was the right man quite early on in his Arsenal tenure. And when I look back at it now, I do feel like, you know, maybe I was a little bit harsh not in terms of thinking he wasn't the right man, because that was proved right over time, but maybe in looking at him a little bit early on in his tenure. And I gave Mikel Arteta a bit more leeway at the beginning, because in my opinion, Mikel Arteta inherited a worse side. I know he's been given money to spend, but I watched Roma yesterday, okay? And a lot of you guys in the chat are going to completely disagree with this, and that's absolutely fine. But I watched Roma. I watched them yesterday. I watched them in their opening game of the Serie A campaign. And you cannot tell me, I'm sorry, but you cannot tell me that as good as they are and as good as they will go on to be, that, for example, Emile Smith-Rowe is right now, today, a better player than Henrik Mkhitaryan. people would disagree with that, but Mkhitaryan is tearing it up. He's creative. He's clever. He creates opportunities, scores goals. He contributes more statistically than Emil Smith-Rowe does in terms of his outputs. And this keeps taking me back to that point again of, yes, Mikel is at fault here, but this is a bigger job than the job Unai Emery had. I actually think Unai Emery had more leaders, more experienced. Laurent Koscielny, okay, threw his toys out in the pram and walked out of the club, but he was a leader around the place. Characters like Socrates, who Mikel Arteta decided to bin out himself, were leaders. You know, especially in the change room. Mikel has alluded to that himself. Petr Cech was at the club. And maybe we'll do an episode on this, comparing, you know, during the international break, it's probably a good time to do it, comparing the two. But I do think that Mikel Arteta had a bigger job than Unai Emery, and it's why I gave him more leeway. But, you know, you're right when you say Emery was sacked for far less. You know, it's a fair point. Let's see what else we got in terms of your questions and comments. Again, it updates so quickly. I do apologize. Matt says, Harry, Chris Wheatley has just tweeted that Reece Nelson is joining Feyenoord on a season-long loan. There you go, another one. Reece Nelson needs a loan for me, and I'm a little bit less annoyed about that one than I would be if Maitland-Niles joined Everton on loan, because Reece Nelson, I don't think he really does strengthen our squad, because I don't think he's getting a look in at the moment. I think he is someone who benefits from that. So fair play. I'm all for that. I don't think we get big money for him as well. Therefore, that contributes to my thinking on that. So yeah, good luck to Reece Nelson if that is indeed true, and if it is all confirmed, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, in a little bit more detail on a future episode. T says, got to get back to work, unfortunately. Great show as always, Harry. Perhaps a transfer day live show tomorrow. Take care. Yeah, we're going to be bringing you multiple streams tomorrow on transfer deadline day. We're going to be keeping you across all of the Arsenal news from the afternoon onwards, but we're also going to be keeping you across what's going on across the Premier League and Europe. Any big stories, we'll talk about them right here on the Chronicles of a Gooner. Right, let's see what else we've got. Patrick O'Connor says, hi, Harry. Hope you're well, mate. What position last season, or even this season so far, would Arsenal have this current squad? There's been a lot of this Wenger comparison talk, hasn't there, over the last few days? And we talked at length after Wenger left about being careful what you wish for sometimes. Look, I think I think Arsene Wenger had to go. I think Arsene Wenger came towards the end of his Arsenal career. We all got frustrated by what we were seeing week in, week out. But Arsenal had to get the following appointments right. In fact, the next appointment after Arsene Wenger was probably the biggest decision that Arsenal as a football club had to make and had to get right for a number of years. And they got it wrong in Unai Emery in the end. Then they got it wrong again, it seems, in hiring Mikel Arteta. And all the time we're falling further and further behind. And you saw it at Manchester United. You saw Manchester United even appoint experience in, first of all, David Moyes, and then Louis van Gaal and Jose Mourinho. You know, they went for top managers, maybe with the exception of David Moyes, but they went for elite level managers, or managers who at least shown themselves to be at that level in years gone by. And they still didn't get it right, and they still slumped, and they still fell further behind. And it's because they've made such huge investment that they've managed to close that gap again. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is not great, but he's brought stability to the club. And it just shows that when you have a manager at a club for so long, the way Fergie or the way Wenger were, they become almost an institution, and it's very difficult to move on from them. I don't know where Arsene Wenger would finish with this squad. I think we'd probably concede a shitload of goals, but I think we'd score more goals because I think there'd be more freedom and less structure in our build-up play. He used to take the shackles off people, Arsene Wenger. It's what he was very good at doing. It's why he developed so many great attacking and creative players. So I think we'd have been higher up. I think we'd have finished in the top 6 with Wenger. I really do. And again, that might be an unpopular opinion, but I genuinely do believe that. I think he would have navigated through those difficult periods a little bit better. I think he would have managed relationships with some of his squad in a more effective way, where he'd almost be, you know, what's the word? I think he would be more concerned about the greater good of the team than his ego, and he would be less concerned with this this discipline thing that Mikel Arteta is obviously very big on. Am I saying that's a good thing? No, it was probably one of the faults of Wenger that he didn't really instill a lot of discipline in the latter years. There were players that came to the club and essentially walked all over him. But I guess for me, sometimes as a manager, and I've said this throughout Mikel Arteta's tenure, sometimes for me, you have to apologies there. I don't know why that keeps happening. My mic sometimes cuts out for some reason. I don't know if the wire is loose. I don't know what the deal is. It might be this extension I've got it plugged in through. I do apologize. But we're back. Just give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me now. But yeah, just going back to that point on Arsene Wenger, you sometimes as a manager, you have to put your philosophy or your view or your ego to one side and do what's best for the team. And sometimes that will be allowing a talented player a little bit more leeway when it comes to disciplinary issues, when it comes to attitude issues, etc., because it will get you the results. And ultimately, if you get the results, nobody complains. If you get results, people are happy. If you produce week in, week out, people are happy. And that's what you need as a manager, right? First and foremost, you will be judged on results before anything else. And that for me is massive. And I think Wenger was better at that than Mikel Arteta. Now, I don't know if he was better than at that in the early stages of his career. I don't know if that was something he learned over years. I think we were in situations as a football club where we were in danger of missing out of the top four. And he kind of had to say, well, I need to get in the top four. And so I need to be this way. Maybe that was an adaptation that came later in his career. I don't know. But for me, I think Wenger would have had this team punching a little bit higher. I've got to say, I genuinely feel that. Josh, massive thank you for your very kind super chat donation, mate. Really, really appreciate it. He says, hi, Harry, love your content. My question is, what would you say is Arsenal's strongest 11 if fit? Wow. That's a really good question. Bear in mind, you've caught me completely off guard with this. I'm going to kind of run off an 11, but maybe we'll think about it again for a future show. Lots of future show ideas coming our way today. I think I'm done with Bert Leno, so I'm going to go with Ramsdale in goal, a Tierney at left back, Gabriel White at centre backs. I think at right back, based on what we currently have, and again, people would disagree. I still think Bellerin is our best right back. I don't trust Chambers. I don't like Cedric particularly, based on what we've seen of him so far this season. So yeah, that would be my back four: Tierney, Gabriel, White, Bellerin, Ramsdale in goal. My midfield pivot would be Xhaka and Partey, with a view to Lokonga, stepping in and taking over from Xhaka later on. I'd look at Odegaard in the 10. Then I'd look at Pepe from one flank, Aubameyang through the middle, and probably Smith Rowe from the left. Now Smith Rowe, but then I leave Saka out. Probably Saka and Smith Rowe and Odegaard to share that role. I don't know. It's a tough question, but there you go. Also, we've got a very special episode of the podcast coming your way on Tuesday. Obviously, tomorrow is deadline day, but aside from the deadline day coverage, we've got a very special interview coming up with a former Arsenal hero, a player that I grew up watching and grew up sort of being a massive fan of. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to announcing that. We'll announce that a little bit later on social media, who it's going to be. I put a little teaser out the other day. Lots of you guessed in the replies. Some of you guessed right, some of you guessed wrong. And all those correct entries will be going in a prize draw, and we're going to be getting a prize out to whoever comes out of the hat. So yeah, stay tuned for that. I almost forgot about it with all this kind of doom and gloom around Arsenal. Better set my alarm and make sure I don't miss it. Right. We are going to leave it there. We're going to leave it there. Massive thank you to everybody for tuning in again. Really, really appreciate it. Really appreciate your constant support. And it's so great to see really consistent numbers in terms of those of you joining us live. I know I don't always give you guys a lot of notice with regards to the times that we're going live, so I do appreciate you all being here. There are over 500 of you watching us right now across the multiple platforms. If you could hit that like button, I'd really, really appreciate it. We've got 126 likes on the board. Surely we can get up to 175. So please hit that like button. And while you're doing that, drop in the chat. Let me know where it is you are tuning in from, and I'll give you guys a shout out before we end the live stream. So like, it really does help. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. That really helps too. And if you'd like to go one further by becoming a member, you can do so by clicking the join button or clicking the link in the description. Yeah. Right. Let's get some of your locations, and I'll give you guys a shout out. Marshall says in the chat, YouTube be tripping, Harry. I ain't receiving the notifications. Do you know what? That happens to me sometimes, and then sometimes they work, and I don't understand why that is. I have queried that with YouTube in the past, because there was an issue last week with YouTube where a load of subscribers disappeared off of the YouTube studio count, but was still showing in the public count, and I couldn't work out what was going on there. Did I wake up and lose 300 subscribers overnight? Was it something I said? But apparently it was an issue at YouTube where the two totals were not tallying up, and they said they'd rectify it within a few days, and they did. I also asked about the notification stuff because I've heard this from a few of you, and again they had no explanation. So I was probably talking to a robot, which explains a lot. But anyway, right, let's give you guys some shout outs. Wesbird is in Milton Keynes. Marshall's joining us from New York, Harlem. Shah Gooner is in Singapore. We've got Justice joins us from Harare in Zimbabwe. We've got Yoram from Johannesburg. Nishith says he's outside Conte's residence. Steve is in rainy Kent. I'm sorry to hear that, mate. Triumph is in Aylesbury, Buckinghamshire. Hardik's in India. We've got Tamash in Budapest. We've got Odiwa from Kenya. Kato is in Kampala, Uganda. We've got Perry in Anguilla. We've got St. Lucia. We've got North London from Josh. We've got Essex. We've got so many coming through. This is great. We've got the Modern Gooner, who joins us from China, but he's shouting out all his friends in Perth, Australia. We've got Ghana. We've got Toronto. We've got Brixton, South London. You know what? I was in Brixton last night. I stopped off on my way home from a party. I stopped off in Brixton. I had a Morley's chicken, which is what you got to do when you're in Brixton. And headed back home. So yeah, big shout out to everybody in Brixton and south of the river. Omar is in Nairobi. We've got Slough. We've got India, Bangalore, Cyprus. Lovely to see that. Gibros means Cyprus, for those of you who don't know. They're watching that and trying to read it, trying to work out what it says. Marrakesh, we've got Highbury Corner, Dublin, Syracuse, San Jose, Tel Aviv, Southeast London, Brisbane, Australia, and all over the planet, which is great. Right, we're going to leave it there. Let's catch up soon. There'll be plenty to talk about, I'm sure, over the coming 24 hours. Until next time, take care of yourselves and enjoy what's remaining of your bank holiday Monday. Ciao.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.